Well, for this edition of the KLSA Dockside Chats, I had a chance to sit down with Mike Dolbey, a fellow member of the Kawartha Lake Stewards Association Board and a longtime citizen scientist. After checking out a couple of oxygen meters on my dock, Mike and I sat down for a chat. Welcome, Mike. Great to have you here.
Wonderful to be here, Bob.
The first thing I wanted to ask, I said longtime citizen scientist, how did you get into looking at lakes and rivers and such?
Well, I guess I've always been interested in the water. I was raised next to Lake St. Louis, or very close to it, in
really?
Montreal. In those days, you could swim in it, and as a kid, my pals and I would be down in the lake most of the summer, learning to swim, fish, boat, and that kind of thing. So I had an early introduction. There was quite a hiatus for a while. After university, I took up scuba diving in the 70s.
Okay.
For a brief period.
In freshwater or mainly marine?
Out in Great Lakes.
Okay.
We were in Toronto by then, and I learned to dive in a swimming pool in Toronto, but then did open water in Lake Huron and places like that.
Oh, cool.
But before very long, two children came along, and in 1980, my wife and I bought our cottage on Lake Katchewanooka, the lowest of our Kawartha lakes. So from then on, my tank is still in the back of the garage, but I don't think it would be certified anymore. I haven't.
Well, you never used. I think I still have a paddy card somewhere, but it's been a few years for me too.
I've had my beard for so long that my mask probably wouldn't seal unless I shaved. So
okay, but then at some point you started measuring various things in Katchewanooka, among other places, I guess.
Well, in 1980 we arrived. I was still working, so it was mainly weekends and summer holidays. But of course, we were right on the lake, and we were watching changes, through the 80s and 90s as zebra mussels came in, and certainly the rise of milfoil and such changes. I retired in 2000, and then we also got very interested in gardening during that period. We found that even though we had not wanted any gardens at the cottage that we bought, there were remnants, and so we, even though the place is not well winterized, we started coming up from April till November.
Okay.
And so we were there and able to observe the lake through a good deal of summer periods. And really, it was in about 2005 that I went to a Lakeland conference. And there I met Mike Stedman, who was manning KLSA information. And I picked up some of the annual reports, and Mike was a very good salesman, and certainly portrayed KLSA well. So I went to their meetings, picked up further reports, and was kind of hooked, I guess. I started, did phosphorus measurements and E. coli starting the next year. And also, it was in 2006, I decided, well, I wonder what's going on. I was reading the annual reports at that time, and I must say, over the years, I've been back and read them many times. In fact, just in the last few months, I've been rereading some of the old reports, and there are some terrific articles. Some really of the articles written by Kevin Walters and Kathleen McKenzie about the Kawartha Lakes in general, phosphorus in particular. They are really terrific. But at that time, and I think still today, there are some mysteries that haven't yet been, they haven't been explained to my satisfaction yet. It's particularly to do with phosphorus. Its rise and fall, what causes it to vary from year to year. So after reading those early reports, and I decided, well, maybe I should be doing some measurements too, just to sort of see how things change during the year. And so I set myself up a spreadsheet and would go out every couple of days about 4 o'clock and measure water temperature.
4 in the afternoon, I hope.
About 4 in the afternoon, yes indeed. Well, usually after I've been gardening or doing other activities all day, by about 4 it was nice to go down to the lake in my bathing suit, have a swim, go and check the rain gauge and the temperature. I had a min-max thermometer, one of these U-shaped devices where it leaves a little pin at the minimum.
The old style.
The old style, not electronic. And I still am using it today.
And very reliable.
Very reliable. It's a mercury thermometer.
Yep.
And
when did that record keeping start?
In 2006 was my first year, and I started in early April, and I recorded through to the end of October, and I've been doing that every year since then. Once you get into the habit, it's just sort of every day, about 4 or every 2 or 3 days. This year, I should say, I've been doing it virtually every day if I can. And that's because I've become very interested in flow and current. So we can talk about that either later or another time.
No, I think it's definitely an interesting aspect of the Kawartha Lakes and the Trent Severn system in general is that you've got these beads on a string, and everything that's happening in the beads has a lot to do with what's happening in that string, right?
Absolutely, and Katchewanooka is the lowest point on the string, so everything in the watershed goes down through Katchewanooka.
All roads go to Rome.
All roads go to Rome. Everything that comes down from Halliburton, in from Scugog, down from the upper end of Stony Lake, it all eventually comes down through Katchewanooka, which is quite a narrow lake. In fact, originally it was a string of 3 small lakes with rapids between, and it was in the 1840s when they built not the first, but the first successful dam in Lakefield, the one that lasted. They raised the water level by 43 inches.
Wow.
And that flooded the rapids and in fact flooded all the way right up to the top end of Katchewanooka where I am. And the reason I know that is because we own an island which is part of our deed, but the reason is that it was part of the mainland when deeded in 1830. And the shallow land behind it was flooded when the dam was built. So the island, being part of the mainland originally, is part of our deed, as opposed to being Indian land or something else.
You know, that's a story everywhere. This little back bay here is part of our deed because this whole bay was a bunch of stumps and so on. You know, post the establishment of the lock and dam system.
When I canoe around behind my island, I have to be careful because there's still enormous pine stumps. They're 150 years old, but they've been under the water, and they're quite deteriorated, but they are still basically there.
So you've watched things day to day, year to year, and I mean, it's funny. I just finished teaching an environmental science course. When I was talking about climate change, I felt almost like a living museum because I'm talking to them about changes I've seen over my career since the 80s. Are you seeing stuff when you look at your spreadsheets, when you look at the lake? Are you seeing things that to you are really evidence of climate change over that 30-year
Well, I must say
so period? I mean, I guess you're 15, 20 years is your data collection.
Well, it's interesting because, every year, one of the things it's shown me is that every year is different.
Agreed.
A little different one way or the other. You particularly notice this when you look at spring floods, but in other ways too, the maximum temperatures that the water in the air gets and the time and so on, they vary. Rainfall is one of those things too that varies considerably from year to year. I have a number of charts. I'll just show you a few things here. This is my clipboard, which my current readings scribbled in. I just record them here, and then I take them in when I feel like it or I'm interested in, and shove the numbers into my spreadsheet. And I keep a spreadsheet for each year, but then I also have what I call an epitome file, or it would be a database where I bring all the data for each year into one great big file. They're different sheets within the spreadsheet, but then that allows me then to look at things that are happening from year to year. And one of the things particularly, it came up when KLSA started talking about doing long range, looking at water temperature over the long term. So I did look at my data, and this is for example water temperatures, all the different curves over the years. I can pick out data and do things with that data if I want to.
So you're sure you don't want to do another grad project?
Well, I'm going to be 80 next month. So, I'm hoping to be able to collect data for many more years, and so far I'm healthy and hearty. But
one thing that
I do have my hands full right now.
One thing that might be interesting, I don't know, we can talk about it, is I have a few senior undergrads who are going to work on a thesis this year, and we're going to meet in a couple of weeks to figure out a project, but maybe one of them could have a look with you at the data, because I'm sure there's fodder in there for some interesting research.
I'm more than willing. Whoops, a little. Yeah, I'm I'm willing to share the data. There's no point in collecting it if nobody looks at it. So by all means, if you think there's interest in it, then sure.
Okay, and I think Oscar's telling us that we're out of time.
I think so. And thank you for your interest in my measurement projects. Like I say, I'm hoping to continue for many more years.
I hope you do, and I'll help you whatever way I can, Mike.
Well,
thanks for chatting with us.
Great.